all around the world. As I said, this year is the 10th annual Revolution Against Aging and Death, and it will also be joined by the joint meeting with the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation. And that's my good friend Aubrey de Grey's organization. The Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation annual event and the RadFest are both at the same time at the Red Rock Casino Resort and Spa in Las Vegas. This will be the thing to attend. It's a top longevity research anti-aging event with breakthroughs in age reversal strategies. You can explore real treatments. They also have something special this year. It is going to be the, let's see if I can get this right. Last year it was Rad City. This year it is Rad Clinic. And it's a community and inspiration going on July 7th through the 14th. I will be there, but the event will be July 10th through the 13th. I'm there personally, July 7th through the 14th. I'm there for the whole week. Come and visit with me. But the event itself at the Red Rock Casino is in Las Vegas, July 10th through the 13th. You don't want to miss that. And you can't zoom in. You've got to be there in person. Follow the links at our website at perpetual.life or go to radfest.com. That's RAAD Fest.com, standing for Revolution Against Aging and Death Festival. There's a biohacking congress in 2025. That's in Durham, Germany, September 12th to the 14th, where you can experience biohacking, health optimization, longevity strategies in the Black Forest. That's in Bad Durham, Germany. So go to the Biohacking Congress if you're in Germany. That's going to be September the 12th through September the 14th. But if you're in London, September the 13th and 14th, the Health Optimization Summit of 2025 in London. That biohacking, you'll learn about biohacking tools and personalized wellness strategies right there in England. On October the 28th through the 30th in Geneva, Switzerland, the Global Longevity Summit, Mastering Aging Science and Longevity Innovations. October 28th through the 30th. If you're in Switzerland, you definitely want to get to this one. And that's going to be in Geneva. Find out all about this event and all of the events on our calendar at perpetual.life. At the top of the calendar, at the top of the website, click on the events, and you can read all about those items that I've just told you about, those events that you don't want to miss, and even more are there now. Once again, if you're in an organization that are heavily into super longevity, cryonics, AI, things that we all need to know about, let me know about your event. We'll be very happy to post them at Perpetual Life. In our church, we have events on the last Thursday of the month. So you can join our Zoom and YouTube in July, August, September. Will be all online. We will also be having a special memorial at the end of September. That will be both in person and in Zoom for our dear brother Douglas Baldwin, who is resting in cryonic suspension at the biostasis of Cryonics Institute of Michigan. It is our solemn duty to find the solution to reviving Douglas so that he may open his eyes and become reanimated in life and love. It's our solemn duty to see that happen. We will be having memorial for Doug at the end of September, so you can watch about the posting of this memorial at our website, perpetual.life. It would behoove me to also let you know about one more thing, and that is coming up at July 2nd through the 4th, the Global Longevity Conference, and that is Trinity College, Dublin. But let me see if I've got that information correct. I'm not sure. Go to the website at perpetual.life. Let's go to the creed now, our Perpetual Life Creed. We believe that all of life is sacred and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our prophets, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth. We follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will be solved only when humanity, through our unified efforts, becomes an instrument of universal resuscitation, when the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And so, we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy, serving our Creator and the human race forever and ever. I'd like to announce the Super Longevity Volunteer of the Month, and that person is none other than Dr. Aubrey de Grey. Dr. Aubrey de Grey is a man that works tirelessly around the world with researchers, financiers, and is an icon in our mutual desire towards making death optional. Aubrey has been our guest speaker at the church several times, and he was just in doing a presentation just this past April. And Aubrey has been instrumental helping me connect with other people in super longevity. He is the man who introduced me to Bill Falloon over a decade ago, which led to the creation and founding of this church, the Church of Perpetual Life. Aubrey was on the Stephen Colbert show once, and I actually played the recording of that interview at my wedding reception, much to the delight of my good friends and super longevity family, but also to the chagrin of my mother, who was a staunch Catholic and who never quite understood my personal quest for an unlimited lifespan. So the Aubrey de Grey, who has committed tens of thousands of hours toward super longevity around the world and with our church, and the founder of numerous organizations and a giant in the worldwide movement toward defeating death, we thank you, Aubrey. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. We thank you for all that you have done and continue to do. You are the Volunteer of the Month here at Perpetual Life, and we recognize you today. Now we come to the main events. If you have questions for our speakers tonight, please send them to us in our chat box, and you can do that anytime throughout the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will have an answer for your questions. We'll have a questions and answers segment, so please put your questions into the chat box in Zoom, in YouTube live stream at any time. Dennis Kowalski, I have an introduction for you, but first, it would be very proper for us to recognize that when we were suspending Doug Baldwin, we went to two sources. We have Alcor, a great organization. We have the Cryonics Institute, another great organization. And we had to find a way to get Douglas into suspension. Unfortunately, Doug was a cryocrastinator, a procrastinator in his own cryonic suspension. He has been a public cryonicist for decades, working with his estate. I know that he, for 30, 40 years, has been interested in and talking about cryonics with people, studying cryonics, and wanting to sign up for cryonics. Finally, he did. He signed up, but unfortunately had a financial arrangement that got in his way. He had a financial difficulty in paying his life insurance, which is the way in which most of us support our cryonic suspension. So he missed a payment or two, lost his cryonics policy, but was signed up for cryonic suspension. It was with the help of Dennis Kowalski and the great RBS team, Houston and Christine, and the wonderful people who actually put Doug into suspension, that I know Doug has a super good suspension at this time and rests in suspension with the Cryonics Institute. But this all happening, and through this process, Dennis mentioned, maybe I should come over to the Church of Perpetual Life and give a talk on the dangers of procrastinating with cryonic sign-up, procrastinating with what I call cryocrastination. And that's a deadly thing. We've seen it here with the cryocrastination that Douglas had. We see it with the actual cryonic suspension with Douglas. I saw it firsthand, and it's not something you can do. You can't just say, well, I've got money in the bank. I know my family. I trust them. They'll make sure that I get into suspension. They know I'm an ardent supporter of cryonic suspension, and it's my wishes, and that's what I want to happen, and they know this, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to sign up now. I can let my people who are going to take care of me do that for me at the very last minute. And no, that is not what you can do. That is the worst thing to hope for, because it won't happen. A beautiful friend of mine, Ken Weiss, he was an ardent member, a longtime member of Alcor, signed up with his life insurance in place, ready to take care of his needs. He was a multimillionaire who had plenty of money for the suspension that I know, wanted. But for whatever reason, he did not get suspended. His membership with that cryonics organization lapsed. He jumped out of the organization, and I spent a couple of years working with him, talking to him, trying to get him to join an organization, trying to help him make sure he was covered. In the end, he was not suspended, sadly. Ken Weiss is a cautionary tale of why you should not put your cryonics suspension into the future or leave that for other people to do. You need to do it first. If you don't sign up, you simply will not be suspended. You cannot hope for some people who love you to do that for you. You have to do it for yourself. It's easy to do. It's inexpensive to do. Martine Rothblatt, the founder of Sirius Radio, of satellite radio, and the highest paid female executive in this country at the time, stood on our stage and said, the cost of cryonic suspension is simply the same as the cost of a cup of coffee a day. But you have to act. You have to do something about it. Now, we are so happy to have Dennis Kowalski, who has served as the Cryonics Institute president for over 10 years and is also a retired firefighter and nationally registered EMT paramedic, as our next speaker. He is a nationally registered EMT paramedic for the city of Milwaukee and has been certified in advanced cardiac life support, ACLS, advanced pediatric life support, PALS, and as a CPR instructor for the American Heart Association. Dennis Kowalski first learned about cryonics on television in the 1970s. I know Dennis is not a cryocrastinator. He is not a procrastinator, but a man of action. The man should wear a cape. He's really a cryonic superhero. As a paramedic, Dennis has had lots of experience dealing with life and death and how to lead cardiac arrest codes. He is also experienced in running multiple cryonic standbys that led to some of the best standbys outcomes on record. His training and skills have given him numerous opportunities to be part of saving lives while helping others in great distress. He also taught emergency medicine at the Fire Academy and the Milwaukee County Emergency Medical Center. He also worked various special events planning disaster relief and has ran multiple mass casualty triage incidents. He has been a National Registry examiner at various colleges where he helped to certify new EMTs and paramedics. His leadership abilities, knowledge, and experience in the EMS field and educational system make him a clear leader in cryonics today. His specialized medical experience and training has allowed him to serve as a bridge between conventional emergency medicine and cryonics. Dennis was raised in a small suburb outside of Milwaukee. After high school, he served in the U.S. Marine Corps as a special reconnaissance operator and communications specialist. In 1991, he went to the University of Waukesha, probably not saying that right, University of Waukesha, clearly in Wisconsin, to study philosophy and astronomy. Dennis has volunteered for multiple charitable veterans causes, such as the Disabled American Veterans, Project Staying Alive, and the Survive Alive House. He works with the Focus and Survive programs designed to educate the community about fire safety and prevention. He has served on committees for equal employment opportunity, quality control, sportsman activities, the Wisconsin Mycological Society, and as a political action volunteer. He also is a member of the Cato Institute, an organization dedicated to the principles of individual liberty. Dennis is happily married to his lovely wife, Maria. They have 3 children and a cat. Dennis's goals are to continue seeing growth and stability in the CI membership. He'd like to see more local support groups formed to promote comradeship, outreach, and local emergency response initiatives, just like we at Perpetual Life want to see meetups occur and be created all over the country, all over the world. So would Dennis. He would like to continue to provide solutions for the challenges and problems facing cryonics today and into the future. Advocating for cryonics and nanomedicine are essential to his philosophy and to the future of cryonics. As someone dedicated to helping others, he sees advancements in these technologies as the logical conclusion to the quest to prosperity and super longevity. During Dennis's term as CEO of the Cryonics Institute, he has introduced many positive changes there, including marketing and branding initiatives, member standby education and equipment kits, public relations outreach, including many national and international interviews, and organizational and operational efficiencies, facility improvements, and continued growth and strength of membership. I was on a plane scrolling through the channels, and here pops up Dennis Kowalski doing an interview. He was, I forget the one it was, but if you ever Google cryonics, you're going to find Dennis Kowalski popping up with interview here and there all over the world. Let's bring up Dennis Kowalski. Thank you for speaking today. We are so glad you are here, Dennis.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm going to have to shorten my bio and make it easy on you next time. And by the way, you're looking very young, youthful and healthy. You must have lost some weight there, Neil. Anyways, so yeah, it's so important. So can you guys hear me good? Can everyone hear me? I don't know if I'm not getting any feedback. Okay.
Yes, we're hearing you well.
Dennis.
All right.
Great, Dennis.
All right, great. So thank you for such a wonderful introduction. Yeah, looking at all the case reports, looking at everything we do in cryonics, always looking, what can we do better? What did we do good? What do we not do so good? What do we want to avoid next time? What do we want to gravitate for and do more of? So you have to look at that. That's how you look at things if you want to improve. And one thing that keeps coming up, you look at the case reports and you see to yourself, wow, some people get really good suspensions and some people not so much. And it really has nothing to do with money. You can throw money at this problem. I mean, it helps. Money always helps, but it's all about preparation. I really want to drive home that it's all about preparation. And I'm going to talk about a few situations that we've ran into over the years, situations, and this is not indicative or a slight on any cryonics organization or even any person. It's just, excuse me, it's just human nature that we procrastinate, right? We put things off. And the one thing that we tend to put off a lot is negative things. And what's more negative than death? Something you sweep under the rug. There's hard statistics that say that more than 50% of Americans, and probably this goes for worldwide, have not filled out their will, you know? So then in the end, they get this big mess where siblings think that they were supposed to get the this and that, and then they fight over it. And, you don't think that. I don't think really most good parents want their children fighting over the crumbs of their estate. That's terrible. And even crazier statistic is about divorced couples, where people don't change their beneficiary forms on life insurance from their past spouse that they might have been fighting with, cats and dogs, tooth and nail. They're not even interested in that spouse, but they didn't make the beneficiary changes. So the money from the life insurance policy goes to the spouse that they may not have liked and doesn't go to their children or family their new family that they wanted to support. And why is that? Why would people do such a crazy thing? Well, that's because they're just sweeping it under the rug, pushing it off, and not thinking about it. Especially, who thinks they're going to die tomorrow? Who thinks they're going to be hit by a bus? Well, eventually the Grim Reaper gets us all. And that's why you got to plan. You got to plan ahead. And it turns out that when you look in all of these case reports from all the organizations across the world, there are people who kind of roll the dice. They think it's a turnkey operation. They pay for, fill out the paperwork, pay for everything, and they just hope everything's going to work out. Or even worse, they don't pay for things or don't fill out all the paperwork or just tell their friends, yeah, I want to get cryopreserved, and then it just stops right there. So we're going to go over a list of the 10 worst things you can do in cryonics, some things that you can do to mitigate those 10 things. And we're going to go over some case studies. I'm going to leave the names out and organizations, but just so you can get a rough idea, where do I fall into this place? Am I a person who prepares, there is no perfect system. There's nothing that says for sure that if you do all this planning, everything's going to work out. But I like to think that there is kind of layers that you can add to your protections, and it becomes statistically harder and harder for you to fail. Nothing's impossible, but the more you put in, the more you get out. So looking at the 10 worst things in cryonics. Number one, just talking about cryonics and not signing up ahead of time. So many people will talk. You see them in the media. I mean, famous people all over the place talked about it. This is a good idea, but they've got more than enough money and resources. They just don't do it. They don't get it. And there's a whole process. You have to sign a lot of different paperwork. You got to make sure your funding's in place. You can't just say, well, I've got lots of money, don't worry about it. No, you have to prove that you have the money in place, either through a life insurance policy or through assets earmarked for cryonics. And there's a whole process where you have to make sure that your next of kin aren't disagreeable to cryonics, and you got to clear things out of the way. So there's 10 worst mistakes. Number one is just not signing up. The next is signing up but not having proof of funding. So you may have proof of funding for a period of time, and then things happen. Things happen in life where you have some financial troubles, maybe miss a life insurance payment. As we get older, life insurance payments go up. Our recommendation, by the way, is to either get whole life early, young, is when the prices are low, right? And whole life is going to cost a little bit more, or get term life, but invest the difference between what you would have paid for whole life in solid investments, so that as your term life goes up, as you get older, term life is going to get more and more expensive. And I'm sure Rudy and others can talk, to that, and why it's wise to, choose one or the other. You can't just get term life and then just hope that the terms are going to stay the same. Every new term, every 10-year term, it's going to go up. It's going to go up even more. It's going to go up, and they're going to price you right out of it, because no life insurance policy in their right mind is going to give you the same rates as a 90-year-old as a 20-year-old for term life. So just expect that those rates are going to go up. And if you haven't invested the difference, you're going to get caught with your pants down. So you have to have proof of funding. We also recommend at the Cryonics Institute that people put the Cryonics Institute down as a co-owner. That way, we get a copy of your statements, and every year we've got proof that you've got the funding in place. And if you miss out, we'll be knocking on your door or sending you a letter or email saying, "Hey, what gives here? Have you changed your mind about Cryonics?" And so you gotta plan ahead. It's not free. I wish it was, but it's just not. Another thing is not telling anybody about your plans. So many people in the cryonics community, there's a lot of reclusive people. They, you don't have to convince people that cryonics is the way to go. I would argue that it's like if you went to a funeral home and you tried to solicit professional assistance and it's a Christian fundamentalist funeral home, but you want a Jewish Orthodox funeral. You don't have to convince people to become Jewish or vice versa to become Christian. You just have to convince them that these are your final wishes. These are your professional. You want them to advocate for you. You're willing to pay for their services. What you're doing is legal, it's ethical, and you're willing to pay for it. So you have to do the same thing, I guess, with your family and your friends. You have to say, whether you believe in cryonics or not, I want you to honor my wishes. Are you willing to honor my wishes? You have to obtain that commitment from those people. If they're not willing to commit, then you take that authority away from them, maybe through a power of attorney or through through an estate attorney. You might suggest that someone else has disposition of remains and control over your remains. You can take power of attorney financial and power of attorney medical and disposition of remains away from someone if they're hostile towards cryonics. But better yet, if you can work with your family, get them to understand the process, you don't hide this, you don't sweep it under the rug. You have to tell people about your plans. The fourth thing would be not planning at all. Some people just think it's a turnkey operation. They sign up, they got plenty of money, right? I'm not going to worry about this. The Cryonics organization is going to take care of everything for me. Well, I got news for you. We can't be everywhere at all places at once. You can't even treat traditional, conventional medicine like that. If you want the best outcomes in medicine, you have to talk to your doctors. You have to let them know what you're experiencing so that they can do a proper diagnosis. You have to ask sometimes for second opinions. You have to ask for these people to break down what they're going to do, what they plan on doing on this procedure. Are there any alternatives? What are the side effects? So, planning is extremely important, and you've got to go through the process, and you've got to talk to people, and you've got to ask questions, and you have to know what you're getting into. Then, this is a huge one, not notifying your organization, Cryonics Institute, of the emergencies. And, I want to say that Neil was very generous when he said that Dennis isn't a procrastinator. Well, that's not 100% true. There's times I have procrastinated. When I first got interested in cryonics, I think I was 17, 18. I didn't sign up until I was 35 years of age. That was at least 15 years where I could have afforded cryonics, but I procrastinated. And I went back to step one, not signing up for cryonics. So it took me 15 years to get my head out of my butt, if you will, and sign up. Well, what about not notifying CI of emergencies? I'll give you an example. Extremely affluent woman, I'm not going to name her name, set up everything with CI, overfunded by hundreds of thousands of dollars, had a flight for life helicopter set up, had suspended animation, all kinds of things set up. But guess what? She didn't tell anyone about cryonics because she was a little embarrassed about it. So there was no early notification. She died, was in a morgue for a couple days before her neighbor, who was going through her paperwork, noticed that, oh, this woman is interested in crime, then called CI days later. And so, as you can imagine, all of those resources and all that money were for naught because of not notifying CI of emergencies. We have all kinds of ways to, one is to just be non-reclusive, to have people checking in, be sociable, have people checking on you, be neighborly. You can't be a total introvert. We also have, and we're going to talk about, I think one of the speakers coming up after me is going to talk about technology like apps where you can be notified of, they'll check on you, kind of like a life alert. Help, I'm falling, I can't get up. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the old commercial. You've got bracelets and necklaces that you wear, wallet ID cards, file of life stickers that would go on your front of your house or your bumper of your car that indicate in your glove box is more information about your medical and cryonics wishes, or on your refrigerator, on a refrigerator magnet, that sticker on the front of your door would indicate that that information is there. And so the police, first responders, ambulance crews, or whatever would know after seeing that sticker either on your car or your front door to look on the refrigerator, to look in your glove box. There's all of these things. No one of those things is going to protect you 100%, but all of those things together all provide, like I said, the layers of protection. Like think of it as redundancy, multiple levels of redundancy, right? Nothing is perfect, but every little 5-10% here, 5-10% here is going to make it statistically very hard for you to fall through the cracks. Another one, bad one, committing suicide, right? Some people think that they can end their life so that they can get to the future, or maybe they have some bad lot in life or whatever. At the Cryonics Institute, for instance, and I would hope most cryonics organizations will not accept people who choose suicide. The one caveat being, if you're in an area where it is legally acceptable for euthanasia under circumstances where maybe you have a terminal illness. We're not talking about depression or anxiety. We're talking about maybe end-stage cancer or something of that sort. And then you are in a place where it's legal and you've done the proper due diligence in seeking out those legal methods through maybe multiple doctors and all the paperwork and so forth. That would be the caveat for ending one's life for cryonics. But in no way will we accept anyone who has committed suicide without going through those channels and under those circumstances. The last would be engaging in risky or illegal activities, right? Well, what happens when you're around people who are doing illegal stuff, maybe illicit drugs, I don't know, ne'er-do-wells who maybe are involved in a shooting or something like that. Unfortunately, if bad things happen to you, if you get murdered or something like that, there is a high probability that you are going to get autopsied, and autopsies tend to lend themselves to very poor suspensions. I mean, there's things we can do possibly to lower the chances or mitigate the autopsy by expressing that your wishes were not to have your brain sliced up. Maybe if you were shot in the body, they can do a minimally invasive autopsy. It's just it's not a can of worms you want to open if you don't have to. So just stay away from risky or illegal activities. And if you can, at all possible, don't get murdered. Not that anyone's planning on that, but you just sometimes when there's trouble around, you stay away from it. The other important thing is providing financial or legal incentives so that you will not get suspended. Funny thing, when I first signed up for Cryonics myself, I thought if I don't get suspended, then why would I want to pay for services not rendered? So, there's that option. Let's say I get burnt up in a fire or lost at sea or something like that, and I can't get suspended. Well, then what do I want to happen with that money? Well, it goes back to my family, of course, right? But that also indirectly provides a financial incentive for family who might be semi-hostile to cryonics to get you buried and then collect the money. And then we've seen that more often than not, unfortunately. So what I've done in my personal case is I've switched, I've changed my mind, and I've told my family, if you get me suspended, and I don't care what the circumstances are, I mean, I'd prefer not to be burned up in a fire, but if you can get my body to the Cryonics organization, you're going to get the bulk of my estate minus what I've earmarked for Cryonics. Even if I don't get suspended, the Cryonics Institute's going to get 50 or 100,000, depending on how I lay my estate out. They're going to get a large chunk of money as a donation. So there's no incentive to not suspend me. On the other hand, if they do step in the way of my chronic suspension, they will get disinherited. They'll get $1, so they can't say that they were forgotten in a court of law. So, and my family understands that. They would never do that to me. But I've actually provided the huge financial and legal incentives for them to not mess around with my suspension, to not go after the Cryonics Institute in a legal lawsuit down the road. So kind of ahead of time, thinking, planning ahead of time. Also, not removing hostile kin from your rights to remains and finances. You can do things. You can go out of your way to disinherit those people who are hostile to cryonics. Maybe not, you might still leave the financial incentive in there for them to not mess with your cryonics, but you might take the authority for your disposition of remains. You have to check with your local attorney to see if that can be done. Maybe it involves changing powers of attorney for financial and for medical reasons, and also for disposition of remains. And then, just dying under less than favorable conditions. That's a lifestyle situations, if you weigh less, like you lost a lot of weight, well, you're going to probably have better vascular system when it comes to storage and cool down. So there's all these different things you can do. You want to basically take care of yourself, live as long as possible so that you get the best possible cryopreservation because of advancements in technology. So anyways, those are the 10 big things that you want to, they're the big mistakes. And these aren't just mistakes that I came up with off the top of my head. This is looking at all the case reports from all the organizations and finding out how people get good suspensions and how they get bad suspensions. I'm going to ask, how am I doing for time, Neil?
You're fine. You're fine. I don't know if Neil may not be there, but you're doing fine.
Okay, I'm doing time. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to talk about a couple situations. And so this particular, these are like case studies. This particular, I already talked about the person who had a lot of money and a lot of resources, and they got a poor suspension because they were reclusive, they didn't plan ahead, and they didn't talk to anyone on chronics, and then therefore there was not early notification for their untimely death, and therefore all of those resources, all that money were for naught. I mean, think about conventional medicine. Say um, say your brother was the best cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic, and even say, the Mayo Clinic was a half hour away, but you were reclusive, right? And you didn't really talk to people very often, and you went into cardiac arrest, and you were having chest pains, but you didn't think it was that big of a deal, so you didn't call 911. And then you slipped into unconsciousness, and then you died. And it wasn't for 3 days later that your body was found. Well, there was no notification, even in conventional. What would happen if you had just called 911? Or if you just would have had an agreement with your neighbor to check on you every other day, or at a certain time, maybe you guys would do lunch, or have a cocktail in the evening, and all of a sudden you're not knocking, or you're not coming. It's your turn to come over by the neighbor's house, and you didn't show up, and he goes and checks on you, and you're still alive, but you're unconscious on the kitchen floor, for instance. That's what I'm talking about being reclusive. That's what I'm talking about. How important it is to reach out and build social networks, and also use technology. Have all of these things around you, like multiple layers. Wear the bracelet, wear the necklace, have the wallet ID card on your driver's license, have these file of life on your refrigerator, on your car. I'm going to ask you, how many of you people are using these things? These things are virtually free. You spend thousands of dollars signed up for Cryonics, and you don't have these 50-cent items in place. The CI app for our phone that'll call you and check on you and see if you're alive. You can set it for 1 hour intervals. It's free. You can go on the Google Play Store, or the Android Play Store, or the Apple, whatever it's called. You can download these things for free, even if you're not involved in chronics. It's good to have, just to look in on you and protect those who are maybe a little elderly, or you've just been through a rough surgery or something like that. We can lead a horse to water, we can't make them drink. So these things are there for you. You just have to take advantage of them. So that was, talking about the fairly affluent lady who failed to take advantage of some of these things. Now, another situation was a gentleman who had Lou Gehrig's disease, and we knew exactly when he was going to die. I mean, that's a huge benefit for us. But he reached out and set everything up, and I, personally flew out to be by his bedside with all of the equipment. I knew the moment he was declared dead, I could swing into action, get him in ice, get the blood thinners on, get the CPR going. We got him to CI in no time flat. The refractive index on the cryoprotectants, affluent in it, coming out of the vascular system, showed that he got a perfect, near perfect suspension. Why? Because there was some planning, because we were able to get that equipment to his bedside. Now, not everyone dies on schedule, right? But you can shorten that window from days to hours to minutes just by being a social entity. Now, another person uh, was a VP at the Cryonics Institute. He did a little bit of good and bad. So we knew when he was going to die. He had a terrible disease. I showed up and took care of him. But I'll tell you what he did do. He named a financial power of attorney that was actually hostile to Cryonics. The guy had actually said, I don't, I can't believe that he chose that person, because under the right circumstances, he could have put the kibosh on and changed everything, put a kibosh on the whole Cryonics procedure. Luckily, we didn't have to go down that route and fight that war. The healthcare power of financial attorney was kind of indifferent. And they had suggested that this particular person might change their mind last minute. And it was lucky for that person, lucky for the VIP at CI. He was our vice president. He made a video ahead of time saying that if anybody suggests that I change my mind last minute, they're full of it, and he used stronger words than that. And as a result of his pre-planning, we were able to use that as leverage to make sure that nobody changed anything on him last minute. got him on a plane, flew him out to CI, a near perfect suspension. So, not all planning is perfect, but the more planning that you have, the more layers that you have, the higher the probability that things will be successful versus unsuccessful. So I'm just, and most recently we talked about there was he was a member of Elcor. His financial funding fell through. He got some last minute funding with CI, but he was kind of reclusive. He was going through some really hard stuff, and he didn't tell people 100% what was going on. And so his friends and family, or the people around him, had to scramble. And they did a fantastic job, by the way. Uh, but it made people scramble, and it made for a huge potential failure in the suspension. And that's what drove me to actually want to come here and speak to all of you about how important it is. And I'm going to ask you all to do some hard soul seeking. How many of you want to get cryopreserved? Well, let's even go even further. How many are banking on longevity solutions, like a magic pill or some special diet or some concoction of that's going to save you so you won't need chronics? And then my follow-up question would be, well, what are you going to do if that doesn't happen in your lifetime? Right? Well, then chronics is the obvious solution. How many of you are thinking about chronics but haven't signed up yet? Shame on you if you haven't, because you're not going to, death isn't going to come to you usually on a postcard. You're going to die on this date. It's just going to happen. And if you haven't planned, you're going to be in one of these, we'll check the box, bad situations, right? And then how many of you who have signed up for chronics have done zero planning after the fact, have no standby in place of any sort, much less, or, ideally, you'll have a professional remote standby that's in place to take care of you when there's time for them to get there by your bedside. But you'll also have two tiers. You'll have something local, or some assistance, somebody willing to put you on ice, make that phone call, that emergency call, willing to do a little CPR with the anticoagulants until the other remote standby can get in place, right? So you got to do some planning. And if you haven't done the planning, if you're not wearing the bracelet, if you're not using the app, if you're not, shame on you, because, bad things can happen, will happen if you don't plan. If you really care about this, if you really give a darn, you got to roll up your sleeves. You got to do something about it. All right? If I shut me down, if you guys are running out of time, otherwise I'll give you a quick to-do list. It's kind of like, your 10 worst mistakes in chronics is the opposite, right? But then also, this is a reiteration. What do you do? The first thing you do after you become a member of a chronics organization, you become a fully funded member through life insurance or easy prepayments, right? And that means you either get full life or you get term life. Invest the difference. You keep the organization informed on a regular basis about your health status, address changes, email address changes, phone changes. You wouldn't imagine how many people move and then don't tell us, or change a phone and don't tell us, or change an email. We can't help you if we don't know you need help. Keep your family and friends up to date about your wishes to be cryopreserved. You don't have to fight with them and get them all convinced of what chronics is. You just have to get them to honor your wishes. Don't be reclusive about it. Keep your doctor, lawyer, funeral director up to date on your wishes. The right approach to the right professionals can provide assets for you rather than liabilities. Prepare and execute a living will, powers of attorney for healthcare and finances. Make sure all your wishes are known and in writing. Review the CI standby manual. There's a lot of good information I put in there, so you can look up and see just step by step what you need to do. And it's a lot, but hopefully you'll learn to embrace it, and you'll say, oh, it'll give you peace of mind. It'll give you a sense of hope. Always wear your bracelet necklace and identifying your wishes. Use the technology if it's available. Get involved. Donate time and money. If you don't have money, then you can donate time. If you have some valuable assets or some valuable training, maybe computer programming or whatever, the organization is what you make of it. Keep your records of contact information all up to date, and we recommend that you review these things on a yearly basis, and that you communicate with your cryonics provider. And that's it. That's it. If there's anybody who has any questions for me, I'm willing to take questions now, and or by email or by phone. I am there for you because I want to see you have a successful cryopreservation. I don't want to see you fall through the cracks. And if you're procrastinating, just think bad things can happen. So sometimes it's just time to act, time to move forward.
As a
Outstanding.
programmer,
Can
are
we,
there sorry.
let's see, can we, Neil, are you still, Neil, are you there? I can't tell if Neil is still in place or not. Okay. Dennis, can we have a round of applause for a great job from Mr. Dennis? Bravo! Hey, this is the virtual part you don't get in a virtual thing. That was really lovely, Dennis, and very much on point. And
Does anyone have any questions for me?
Yeah, I had a question. You talked about computer programming, volunteering. Are there what ways can I do computer programming volunteer?
Well,
Sorry.
I know at the Cryonics Institute we have some people working on website upgrades, trying to make the sign-up process a little more fluid and easier, trying to streamline things. I know that Nikki, who is going to be speaking next, I know that she has been working on all sorts of processes for producing new apps and new technologies to provide for early access to the cryonic system or emergency access. So, we're always thinking, well, what happens if you aren't conscious? How are you going to signify that you need help? So, for instance, the CI app that we have, right? That Nikki helped develop, that app, what that does is it checks on you. It's just like a basic timer, right? It checks on you and it says, hey, are you okay? And if you're okay, you hit yes. But if you're not okay, right, and some time goes by, it goes into an alarm mode. Maybe a more obnoxious alarm goes off, and both visual and audio. And if you don't answer that, then it might send out a text to a handful of trusted friends and family locally who have now an option to either call 911 or go knock on your door, find out if you're all right. And that also, we added a feature where it shows at least the phone's last GPS location. So if you were maybe hiking somewhere or wherever you might be, it's going to show your last known location. So someone can physically find you and check on you. And while all of those things, that requires software development. And me personally, I don't have a clue on how to do that. And it can be quite expensive, but we have a lot of very talented people in the cryonics community that understand these things. Maybe you understand tax law, maybe you understand trust law, maybe you understand website development, search engine optimization. I understand emergency medicine. So I was able to take what I've learned in conventional emergency medicine and apply that to the early stages of a standby. I like to say is a cardiac arrest code with ice is what Cryonics is. It's really no different. You add ice and you add a few medications, and it's exactly like a traditional cardiac arrest code. So, everyone's got their talents, and it could be just artistic, looking at new ways to show cryonics. And so, I mean, we're largely largely volunteer. And the more we volunteer and help out, the less it's going to cost for everyone and the more lives we can save. When you bring the cost down, you can save more lives. And that's important to me.
Dennis, I have a question. Can I do hospice at the Cryonics Institute? That way I'll be in the next room when I die, and you'll have a staffer there watching me. Is that an option?
So the
Or
Cryonics
future
Institute,
option?
right, the Cryonics Institute itself is not involved in hospice, but there is hospice centers close to the Cryonics Institute. So that's very doable. We're not into the business of that. I've often said I would love for someone with enough foresight and maybe financial resources to look at vertical integration and how it applies to cryonics. Look at maybe, someone who is cryonics friendly running a hospice center independent of the cryonics organizations. You kind of want a little independence and hands off because, if something happens at the hospice center where there's a lawsuit, you don't want them suing and or closing down the cryonics facility. But if they're two separate entities but happen to have like some similar board of governorship, maybe they make cryostats, maybe they run a funeral home, maybe they run a hospice, maybe they are a liquid nitrogen distribution center, all these things that cryonics needs, kind of like Ford, set up the rubber plant to make tires for his trucks when he couldn't source out the tires himself in the United States. Not saying that we're like Ford or anything, but it just looking at vertical integration as a way of ensuring the long-term survival of cryonics itself.
Got a real quick question that I wanted to up level. I believe it was Josh Universe said something that had a question about what I think was a vial of life, but he thought it was a file of life. That's a quick and easy one. Dennis, could you cover that?
Yeah, so again, in traditional emergency medicine, a couple companies have realized that, sometimes when someone slips into unconsciousness and or cardiac arrest, it sure is nice if there's a family member around to say, yep, Grandpa Joe had 3 heart attacks, or he's a diabetic, or whatever, because then that can help us. Oh, he's a diabetic. We'll check his sugar real quick and we'll adjust his blood sugar. Or he had a heart attack. Okay, get him on the cardiac monitor. Let's see if he's in AFib or VFib or whatever. And so that helps to have that family. But what if there's no family members around? Well, are we going to dig through your filing cabinets to look for the medical documentation that tells us? No, we're just going to hurry up, get you to the hospital. Hopefully the hospital's got it on record in the Epic medical system. But we need sometimes that information immediately. So what people have realized is there is a file of life sticker. It's kind of like a bumper sticker. It can go on your car, on your car window, or on the front of your house. That when you see that file of life, not all fire departments are trained in this. Ambulance companies, fire departments, and police departments, all first responders. That means to them, oh, go look on the fridge. There might be a file of life magnetic holder that's got a document in there, and you open that up and it says he's a diabetic, he's had a heart attack, he's on these medications, he has these allergies, and or call the Cryonics Institute at this number if need be, and again, early notification. Next of kin are these people, and so forth. So that file of life is used in traditional, conventional emergency medicine. Why not? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Why not use it for cryonics too? So the one on your car indicates to look in your glove box, and the one on your house indicates to look on your refrigerator. Those can be picked up for free at the Cryonics Institute. We got them for free, so just ask.
Related to that, Dennis, many of us put framed protocols with all the contact numbers and that kind of thing. Though it's really, mine is framed 2 meters from my desk. So that's another simple thing. You can make sure that your directions and protocols are clear.
Two places us paramedics, firefighters, and police are trained to look is the refrigerator and the medicine cabinet. Why? Because that's where people keep their medicine, and they often keep important to remember documents on those, the refrigerator and by the medicine cabinet.
And the bracelets help. Do they check the bracelets?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I can't speak for all, but eventually someone should. That's why I wear 2 bracelets and a necklace and a wallet ID card. Some people only go into the wallet, and they look at the driver's license. Well, I got a sticker on the back of my driver's license. Some people, I have a separate wallet ID card. I figure, again, redundancy. The more, the merrier. The more stuff that's involved, then if you overlook my bracelet, maybe you'll see the necklace. If you overlook both, maybe you'll see the wallet. So the more levels of redundancy, the better your chances are.
Dennis, you are involved in this, but hi, by the way, long time. You're involved in this in your own emergency medicine. How often are they actually checking for this stuff? I personally, I have a necklace. I have, the wallet card. I also have the sticker on my license. I also have a refrigerator. But is this something that they actively do? That you, from your experience, you see other people actively checking for this sort of stuff? I'm sure.
Well, it depends.
But
if you're conscious, I might not check for any of those things. I'll just ask you. But if you're
yeah,
not
of course.
conscious, yeah, now then maybe the first thing I'll ask is the family member who's standing close by. But now if there's no family member standing close by, now I got to go down into a little deeper detective mode, and I might look at your arm to see if your bracelet's on. I might look at that, I can't tell you for sure. Some fire departments might not even be trained in the file of life like others are. But, my thought is more the merrier. Um, you know, more is more, less is less. Better that you're conscious and can say, hey, call 911, call this person, and also call Cryonics Institute. I'm going in for a major surgery. Please call these people, or call my friend who's an advocate for me, right? And if all else fails, I have this bracelet on. If you can actually tell them, that's great. But, for someone to ignore all of those things, ignore your wallet, ignore your driver's license, ignore your fridge, ignore your bracelets, and ignore your necklace. That's a lot of things to ignore.
Well, look, I've been kind of personally relying on that sort of stuff, not because my family is uncooperative or anything, because they all, everybody respects my wishes, my girlfriend who lives with me included and stuff. I just quite frankly don't necessarily trust any of them to remember in an emergency. My girlfriend's kind of ditzy, as is my mother, as are my mother and sister. I don't trust any of them to actually remember to make the call to you guys if there's an issue. And I have the app, but I actually don't even have the numbers connected to it because it's just been kind of buggy recently. It doesn't go off necessarily when it's supposed to. Sometimes I don't get
I'd like
the
feedback
ringer
about
at
that.
all.
I'd like feedback, because if you're having any problems with that app, then we got to work on some patches.
Yeah, should I report that to you in the future, or Nikki, or
Yeah, definitely report that to Nikki. She's far
Okay.
smarter than I am about that kind of stuff. But
Okay.
also, might want to quiz your family on, hey, you know how to use Google, right? Google Cryonics Institute, the number is right there. But I also have this bracelet. You know where it is, right? I have this wallet ID card. I have this, and then ask them a couple weeks later, where are you going to go if I go down? If I'm in the hospital with a serious injury, who are you going to call? Who who else are you going to call? Like, oh, I'm going to call your mother, or I'm going to call your significant other, or whatever. Who else are you going to call? How about the Cryonics Institute? Oh, okay, okay. How are you going to get the number? Quiz them, quiz them all. And
That's good advice.
yeah, yeah.
Outstanding. As we transition to Nikki's segment in a couple minutes, if that's okay with you, Dennis, could you also tell us about, you were talking about feedback. Would you tell us about the AGM that happens, typically the Associate General Meeting that happens in the fall?
Well, we're currently in the planning phase for our 49th annual general meeting. And at that meeting, we open it up to the public, people who don't know anything about cryonics, so they can get a taste and learn about us. Also, longtime cryonics people, and generally, we have a few speakers. We'll talk about some current topics, talk about what's going on, what's new at the Cryonics Institute. We also have our election of board of directors. We have 12 people on the board of directors. 4 of them are up for election any given year. So we read off the results of that, but mostly, and then we usually have a little bit to eat and so forth, a couple cocktails, but mostly it is a networking. It's where we can get together and brainstorm, talk about what works, what doesn't work, what we need to work on to do better, and just friends being friends and camaraderie, support for one another. That's what it's all about.
Brilliant. And Dennis does a great job running that meeting. And I would encourage you to, even if you're even thinking about cryonics, or maybe you're involved in cryonics, I've been fortunate enough to be there, I think maybe 8 or 10 or 12 of them. You're kind enough to let me speak quite a few of those, Dennis. Thank you for that. It's just a really good meeting, and I find you will be much more, it's very confirming. You realize there's really intelligent people involved here in cryonics. They're very sincere, doing the very best they can to make this a legitimate medical intervention designed to save your life. And I think, I don't know if, I bet some of you have been to that AGM, and it's terrific. Do we have a date on that for this year, Dennis?
Oh geez, now you put me on a spot. I'll tell you, every year, to be consistent, it's always going to be the first weekend of September that is not Labor Day, because we don't want to go. We figure if we did it on the same day as Labor Day, that it would cut into everyone's family time and so forth. So I believe this year,
September 7th, if I'm not mistaken, Dennis.
yeah, yeah. So usually it'll be
Labor Day is really early this year. It's 1st of September.
okay. So
That's
so the first
weekend of September 7th.
is Labor Day, right? So it'd be the second weekend of September. And like the Saturday before, we usually have like a little pre-dinner get together, and then the Sunday of is the AGM, the annual general meeting.
Yeah, with Labor Day being on September 1st this year, it puts your choices at the 7th or 14th. For the first Sunday after is the 7th, the second Sunday after is the 14th.
Yeah, it would not be the second, it would always be the first after.
Yeah, so that'd be September 7th.
And conversely, if Labor Day was on the 7th, it would have been the first then, or whatever.
So we'll make sure we get that information out to everyone with adequate time you can fly up into Detroit. You come up there, I'll definitely buy you a beer, and I would be honored to see each one of you at this coming AGM at CI.
Open tap for Rudy, huh?
Let's see, unless there's any really pressing questions, I think we could probably again give Dennis a great hand. Thank you very much, and move to the world famous Nikki Olson, who will not be introduced, but will tell us some cool stuff that we need to know.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Dennis. And Nikki, can you take over? Oh,
You
we
have
got Neil.
questions for our speakers tonight, please send them to us in the chat box. Remember, Then at the end of the presentation, we'll have a questions and answer segment. And now we want to thank Dennis again for his continued commitment for helping everyone with the best suspensions possible. But at this time, I'd like to suggest that we all simply stand up, stretch, and breathe. You know, it's so much healthier to stand and stretch and touch your toes. I'm going to do that too, but first I want you to do this and breathe deeply. You can do this where you are, every day, wherever you are. Throughout your day, stand up, stretch, breathe. Deep breaths, release the stress. Deep breaths, release the stress. And this is something you can do every day, throughout your day, to release your stress, to release your stress, and breathe in revitalizing oxygen. Breathe in life. Exhale stress. You know, when I'm in a long line at the grocery store or the post office, I'll do this. I'll stretch, I'll touch my toes, I'll breathe deep. And this is much to the embarrassment of my boys who are often with me, my teenage boys, 14 and a half and 16. Sometimes they're at a point where, no, I'm not with him. He kind of walk away and leave me there while I'm doing my stretches. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. You are your own personal health coach. You are in charge of your own destiny, of your own super longevity, of your health. So do it. It's paramount. Stand up, stretch, relax throughout the day. And it's important not to find yourself sitting for too long. It's not good for your health. Okay. Our next speaker has a solution for us with her much awaited invention. Nikki Olson has been working on the problem of cryonics monitoring for over 3 years and is considered an expert in this space. She has a diverse software background, including supply chain engineering and blockchain technology. Nikki is the leader at the Cryonics Monitoring Organization, and their mission is to reduce warm ischemia and improve SMICS scores industry-wide by reviewing, researching, and developing solutions for Cryonics member monitoring. Now, some of you out there are not signed up yet for Cryonics. We've talked about the procrastination already. However, here is a tool that you can have and that you should have. And this tool that Nikki has is something everybody should get and can have. You don't specifically have to be a Cryonics member just to have this tool that she's going to be telling you about. Nikki and her organization, they are leaders in this domain of biotech with over 4 years of experience in research and development of cryonics monitoring solutions, and they work to develop custom solutions for unique needs within cryonics. Her team members are experienced in their technical domains, and they all share a long-standing interest in cryonics. So let's bring up Nikki Olson with her talk on her new device, a new technology, an FDA-approved solution for you. Nikki Olson.
Hi, Neil. Thank you. Can you hear me and see my slides here?
Yes, you're
Yes, it
perfect,
looks
Nikki.
good.
Okay. So the talk I have for you today, I've called A New Era of Cryonics Monitoring. And you can tell me at the end what you think about that, if you think it's hyperbolic or appropriate, but I will make my case with that. So as Neil mentioned, I'm the founder of Cryonics Monitoring. I started R&D in cryonics monitoring in November of 2020. And then in the spring, we launched our website, and we have 5 engineers total involved, 3 in the US and 2 in the Ukraine, 2 hardware developers in the Ukraine. Over the last almost 5 years now, we've experimented and evaluated over 50 possible solutions to this problem of cryonics monitoring. We've created multiple prototypes, as well as I've developed 1 system and maintained 2 systems that are currently in use in the industry, and those are with the Cryonics Institute. So the topic of unattended death, just to be clear what we're talking about with that. The problem is that if you have an unattended death, then SST is delayed, cooling is delayed, you have a worse outcome in cryonics. And you might wonder, how frequent does this happen? And I found data on this from Max Moore. He had a readiness and deployment report in 2021, where he looked at over 21 years from a period of 2000 to 2020. 6% of cases in that period were having an autopsy, 13 to 14% involved unattended deaths, and 23% were a straight freeze. So there are lots of negative outcomes in cryonics, and approximately 1 in 7 of those 7 people, you don't want to be the orange person in that picture and have an unattended death issue in cryonics. So to just add some more numbers to that, there are approximately 7,000 cryonicists, people who are signed up for cryonics. That means approximately 980 or 1,000 people will face an unattended death. Each year, approximately 30 cases in cryonics, 4 people having unattended death. So they're at home, alone, they have a heart attack, they have a stroke, something happens somewhere, and no one is aware that they've passed away. So that's where cryonics monitoring comes in. And you might wonder how many people are already using some form of monitoring. And this is my rough estimate based on just the past almost 5 years and working in the industry, that it's about 1%. I would estimate about 100 to 150, maybe 200 people are using some kind of dedicated cryonics monitoring. And the 2 options right now are Cryonics Institute apps, which is iOS and Android. And Alcor has iOS and Android as well as a service that will call you, a third-party service that will call you daily. You might point out that there are other kinds of monitoring that aren't dedicated to cryonics specifically. For instance, the Apple Watch has a fall detection mechanism on it that will alert it has an emergency alert system to it, as well as it can alert on high or low heart rate, as well as irregular heart rate. Google Pixel just came out with loss of pulse, which I will be talking about later here, but that's another option. So many of you have something like this in place, maybe 1 in 20 of you, maybe 1 in 30, but this is not comprehensive monitoring because it'll only catch a subset of the cases. It'll only catch a subset of cases, and in the case of the Google Pixel loss of pulse, it's not going to let anyone in cryonics know that you've had a problem. We'll go into that in more detail. So I am sympathetic to people's reluctance to use monitoring. I often ask people, why are you not using it? What do you want out of monitoring? And up until about 6 months ago, there weren't really any great options for quick alerting. And so people, I think, had this reluctance because they thought, well, it's not going to get there. No one's going to get there fast enough. If they were looking for something that would detect the moment your pulse stopped and then alert authorities, and that didn't exist. The other aspect of this is that all the options up until about 6 months ago were active monitoring options, and I'm differentiating active from passive, in that active, you have to interact with the system daily. Someone calls you daily, there's a notification you respond to, there's a text message you respond to. It required some active engagement on the part of the user rather than passively measuring the vitals. So if you're young and your risk of death is pretty low, you might think, I don't want to do something that's bothersome on a daily basis, given this low probability of dying per year. But if you are older and say your probability of dying that year is 1 in 10, now the fact that this monitoring is burdensome is a problem, because that might impact whether or not you use it. You might start to use it, you quit using it because it's too much of a hassle, and then that could actually affect your cryopreservation outcome. So these are some of the objections. It's not fast enough anyway. The SST can't get there. It won't be perfused because it can't get there fast. So what's the point? There's this daily burden. And I'm here to say today that this framing, I think, is outdated thinking as of about 6 months ago. So these objections that people have and this framework for thinking about cryonics monitoring options is now outdated. So what happened 6 months ago? Well, one thing that happened was the Cryonics Institute iOS app was released, and that was in December of 2024. And so this was the first dedicated, reliable, quick, and convenient passive monitoring alert system, meaning it had a mechanism in place to monitor you passively. It didn't require that you check in or interact with it on a daily basis. These are some just screenshots of what the app looks like in the setup process. We have lots of options for configuration, different ways to set alarms. If you do want to have an active engagement, you can wake up to the app every day at exactly 8 a.m. and check in there, or you could do once every hour. So you're in a bad situation and you really feel like you should check in once an hour. That's also an option. But then the other option is using step monitoring, which I'll get to next. The app also comes with Apple Watch integration, so you're able to check in with your Apple Watch. So in this scenario, the user has tapped a button on the app or tapped a button on the watch face. If we go back here, you can see there's a little CI logo on the watch face there. That's called a complication in terms of watch terminology. You just tap the CI logo there on the watch face, it opens the app, and then you're able to go through this check-in process. So you can indicate I'm okay or alert my contacts, and you'll have to verify that alert. You don't want to accidentally tap it and alert emergency concern, but this is the process you would go through. So it's another convenience for easily checking in with the app. And when it's time to check in, you'll get a push notification, which is actually a critical alert. We needed special designation from Apple and permission to get this designation because it bypasses do not disturb. That's an optional setting. You can turn that off. But it'll come to your wrist or on your phone. It'll say it's time to check in, and you'll follow this process. So the Apple Watch is not required for it to work, especially for the steps. I wanted to make that very clear. You can elect to be monitored by steps, and this is the passive form of monitoring that this offers, which makes it different, easier, and I think more people will use it because of this. So you in the settings, you would go down and select step alerts and enable that. It'll ask you for permission to have your Apple Health data and enable that for steps. And then you'll see your step count there on the main app page. You can also select your threshold. The minimum threshold is 4 hours. We couldn't make that shorter because there's often delays in Apple syncing the step count with the app. And so if we cut that back a little further, like you'd start to get false alarms. So we found 4 hours was the best minimum time to prevent like false alarms, but still maximize like the quality of the alerting. So this is, you probably won't be able to see this in detail, but this is a comparison of how the CI iOS with step alerts stacks up against the alternatives. Above it, Alcor's check-in, the Android check-in for CI. Below it, those two options aren't available. Basically, in terms of time, the CI iOS app has the fastest average, best, worst average times. So across the board, it's the best choice. So the key takeaway from the Cryonics Institute iOS app release is that it's robust, dedicated, comprehensive cryonics solution that is designed to catch 100% of cases. It has active and passive monitoring options. You can alert for 4 hours of no steps, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. It doesn't actually check if you're taking steps at night, so it is blocked off for that period of time. You don't need a wearable in order to use it. It'll work with just step counting on your phone. You can customize your escalation. So you can say which sound, there's 4 different sound options, how much of a delay, if I miss a check-in, how long until my contacts are notified. You can control that whole process to make it longer, shorter, louder, quieter, to make it work for you. We also verify the contacts so that your contacts know what the service is and they agree to opt in to respond to this, and you make sure you have the right phone number. They have to get a text message to opt in. We know that the app can reach them in case of missed alerts. And as I think Dennis mentioned, it's free, available on the App Store to anyone, no restrictions. And the Android version, which there's a legacy version of the Android, doesn't have all the same features, but there's an upgrade coming soon to that. It's due for an upgrade and will get all the same features that the iOS version has. But if you have Android now, the other option that is another big breakthrough in the field of cryonics monitoring is the Google Pixel loss of pulse feature. So Google released this. It went out in Europe late last year and got FDA approved in March this year. And essentially Google Pixel smartwatch, Google Pixel 3 smartwatch is measuring your pulse. If it detects no pulse, it takes a couple readings over a couple minutes. And then if it doesn't find a pulse, it asks if you're okay. If you don't respond to that, then it escalates directly to emergency services. So if you're in the US, it's calling 911. So this is very quick detection within minutes, probably around 10 minutes before anything happens total with 911, but it's still very, very quick. And it has a lot of people are worried about false alarms with it because it's calling 911, but the clinical trial data shows that it has very, very low false alarm rate. They've optimized for that, probably about one in 1,000 false alarms per year per user. So it's just very unlikely to happen. And even then, it'll check with you and make sure you're okay before it escalates that. So the one downside of this and why you can't get that excited about it, even though it is exciting, is that it does only catch about 69% of loss of pulse events. And that is per the clinical trial that Google had to do with that in order to go through the FDA. It's difficult to measure zero for these light-based watch devices. The heart rate mechanism, it's not very good at measuring zero. There's a lot of noise in the signal, and on the lower end, it can't do it with a lot of confidence and accuracy. And so to avoid false alarms, I feel like they've calibrated that, and it's still good. 69% is worth using, but it's obviously lower than we would like, and available only to Android. Again, not dedicated for Cryonics. It's calling 911, not your emergency contacts. So you could end up in the hospital from that 911 call, getting pronounced dead, or anything is happening to you, and people in Cryonics wouldn't know about it necessarily. So this is one other issue with it. So overall, an improvement over the previous options. So yeah, just to take a step back and kind of pull it all together. There's several objections people have had to monitoring, that there isn't anything that's fast enough to use, so why bother? That's false. Anything they would use, they're worried about their contacts being notified and bothering their contacts because there's a lot of false alarms. That's also false. They're worried about it being cumbersome to use. They don't think they're going to have a problem, and so why do anything on a daily basis? This is too difficult. That's also false. These things were true before, but with the CI iOS app, with step alerts enabled and the Google Pixel loss of pulse, these things are not true anymore. So your objections to this are denied, and I don't want anyone here or anyone listening to this to be the next case that's found 6 days later after they've signed up and they've been paying fees and they have their dreams set on the future, and then this is the failure point that they encounter. So just before I take any questions, I just wanted to point out, people are probably aware that Cryonics Monitoring is making custom hardware so that we can get this problem solved, so that it's even easier and faster. But we're not able to talk about it today, unfortunately. So I can't take any questions on that. But if you have any questions about anything else, you can reach out to us at info@cryonicsmonitoring.org. And yeah, that's it.
Nikki, can you hear me? This is Rudy. As always, an outstanding job. How about a nice round of applause for dear Nikki, and how, as always, she is tremendously professional, crisp. We love intelligent human beings, especially if they happen to be in a nice looking package as well. Now, before I dare embarrass myself, let me say I really liked how beautifully harsh and almost crisp, almost legal you were in your final slide, saying basically these objections used to be the case, but now they're not the case. Your objections are overruled.
I have a quick question. What if you take the watch off to take a shower, or you want to take the watch off and put it on a charger? Is it going to call the police?
No, that's something that they've worked out pretty well. Risk detection it can be very accurate. For instance, the Apple Watch, they're so confident in their risk detection that You can have Apple Pay attached to it. And as soon as you remove it from the wrist, it immediately locks up because now this is a risk. Someone could charge your credit card with your watch alone. So wrist detection can be very accurate. And I think in the case of the Google Pixel, they have nailed that down so that you don't have to worry about that.
So the watch knows if it's on your wrist or not.
Yeah.
And if it's on your wrist, it's going to monitor you if your heart either stops, what if your heart does not stop but has unusual atrial defib things? Does it notify people then?
I'm not sure if the Google Pixel, if they have that, but Google has gone through AFib for the Fitbit and they own Fitbit. So if they don't have it now, I'm sure they'll have it soon.
How about the oops, I got it on the charger. How about the Apple? That's an Apple, I think 5.0, and it's supposed to call people. I've got it set up to call people, but you've convinced me that it didn't work in that current iteration, but now it does. This is an entirely unexpected direction. I thought you were going to talk about an RING, which you can't talk about evidently, but instead you're talking about new functionality for watches many of us have that's free, which is pretty cool. Is that right? How do you get paid?
Yeah, I'm saying with the Apple, it's not going to cover all cases. Like it's very accurate for fall detection. So if you're a cryonicist, you should definitely wear something like an Apple Watch because it will catch. If you have a stroke and you fall down, like it will catch that scenario. And you care about this not from a cryonic standpoint either, right? We're all trying to just live. And so any kind of medical monitoring, I think that's not intrusive and somewhat accurate I think it's
And
good.
it does work. I followed on my bike and it said looks like you've fallen. What I can't test is if it works if my heart stops. But I'm supposed to be up leveling questions, and there was a couple of good questions that came in the chat in the chat. And I don't know if you can monitor the chat yourself or not, but one of the questions, Nikki, was is this monitoring work for Alcor as well as CI? Is that whoever wrote that? Yeah, that's I get. Does the app? Josh Universe is clarifying here. Does the app work if you're an Alcor member as well as a CI member?
Yeah, the CI app is available for free to anyone. There's no restrictions. It's not tied in directly with CI, like it's not going to call CI in the case of an issue. It's emergency contacts that you put, so your friends and family. And in terms of cryonics monitoring, just to broaden the question, like our overall goal is monitoring for the whole industry, and so it's not exclusive to any particular industry, any particular organization either.
Wow. Okay, beautiful. Hopefully I asked that question correctly. And Nathan Scott said CI is one of my emergency contacts, so that his watch, I think, automatically calls them. Josh Universe says Alcor is his emergency contact. So in other words, we could have our cryonics vendor as one of the emergency contacts that would be actuated by this functionality.
So for the CI iOS app, it works by text message. So if you put like the CI landline, that's not going to work. If there's a cell number that you can put, that's an option, but they have to opt in. So the CI app, whoever is going to be on that list of emergency contacts has to agree that they are on that. So I'm not sure, Dennis can probably speak to that, but I don't think there's anything in place where CI would be involved directly.
Okay. Is there any other questions that
I can actually answer that.
on the chat here.
That was Dennis, Rudy.
Yeah, so I could actually answer that one. So we would encourage, rather than having 1,000 potential false alarms going to CI, that you at least have one layer of local person between yourself and CI. So like your neighbor or a friend that you have that would check on you to make sure that you are indeed having an emergency event, so that they could call 911 immediately and get you saved before, cryonics is not always the end be all. Like Nikki said, you want to live, right? So if we can get you to live first, so the best thing to do is to have some close friends or family who live close by who can physically check on you and either call 911 or call the Cryonics Institute.
Yes, thank
That
you for
voice from
coming in. That
beyond
makes
is
a lot of sense.
Dennis. Dennis Kowalski, thank you. Go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah, that is, and to kind of put this in a very realistic point, in February the 28th of this year, I literally almost died, remarkably. Had a blood clots that basically got stuck in my lungs and I could not get in the air. Fortunately, my wife was there and called 911 in 5 minutes. They were here. Another 5 minutes, I would have died. But they got me on oxygen. The point being, we did call the suspended animation team as soon as but they couldn't have been here. It would have been 3 or 4 hours before they could have got here. But so the things like that, this can happen. They can happen earlier than we think. The same message about don't cryocrastinate, don't procrastinate on that Dennis brought to us is relevant in this situation as well, Nikki. That is really, I love this upgrade. I'm gonna download it. I'm in.
Success.
Nikki, I have a question for you. So you were talking about earlier the Google Pixel Watch, and I've looked into that watch a little bit because of the loss of pulse detection. That seemed interesting, but I found the same thing that you did, that it's only set up to contact emergency services. And from my research, it seemed that it wasn't even possible to, without maybe jailbreaking the watch, to build an app around that feature to have it contact, either personal contacts or, cryonics provider in this case. Have you looked into that at all? Have you spoken to the development team at all to see if you could build an app around this existing tech while you're developing your own stuff?
I haven't spoken directly to anyone, but the last that I checked, there is no interface for that. And I imagine that this is somewhat of a regulatory concern, that they want to control the entire flow of information, and like from hardware stack all the way up to the phone to the 911 call. I think it would be unlikely for them to open that up. But yeah, I wish. That would make everything a lot easier. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was what I found too. I kind of looked into it for myself. Was there any sort of features that you found on the Apple Watch that could be useful other than like the fall detection that you could like build around? I know that you've played with all of the devices. You've spoken about this in the past, but the devices have gotten better. Have you looked at building more third-party apps around the existing tech while you're developing your own stuff?
So my sad story is that we ventured into building around the Fitbit, around a Fitbit device that ended up, right as we were about to finish it, getting pulled from the market. It was the Fitbit Sense, and they brought in the Fitbit Sense 2, and it didn't have the same API features. The functionality was broken, and we got discouraged and realized that this was kind of just the cycle of technology, that even if we found something that we could kind of build something that was reliable enough around, that we had this risk after all of that time invested to have it just kind of pulled away, or they could do some kind of update that would break our functionality. And so even though we didn't want to make this conclusion, and there's so many reasons, and we understand the pain of it now, 2 years later, after having gone through this process of hardware, is that I really believe that in order to have a reliable system that you can adjust for cryonics purposes specifically, but not for so for the Google Pixel 3, they want to get emergency services to you as quickly as possible, and they think possibly they'll do CPR and you'll be like, it's a life-saving. They're not intending to make that for cryonics. And we see that in the specs, like it doesn't work great for us for cryonics. And so I think for something that works great for cryonics, that cares about all these cases, all these ways you could die, even if you've been dead for an hour, we care about that, right? And to make something like that, we had to conclude, unfortunately, that I think you have to control the hardware. which means either open source or like making your own hardware from scratch. You need enough control over the hardware to get that quality of solution how we wanted it. So we started custom hardware almost 2 years ago now, and it's very difficult and challenging, interesting, fun, lots of things. But yeah, that's unfortunately what we concluded. If something else came along, I'd be happy to look at it, but I'm not like very optimistic about it at this point.
So then, without asking you anything about what you're building, because you already said you don't want to talk about that or hold you to anything, is it something we could hope to see in the 2020s at least,
Yes.
before there's a 3 thrown on there?
You'll know whether
At
at least you'll know whether we failed or not by that point. Yeah. I will not work on it for another yeah.
Well, thank you anyway. I appreciate all the efforts that you're putting into this.
Yeah.
It means a lot to all of us.
Okay, so Nikki, I fall and my phone calls 911 and I'm unconscious and the operator says 911, where's your emergency? Hello, hello, anybody there? Nobody's there. I'm unconscious. I can't call on do you have a what have you solved that problem of somebody falling and being unconscious and unable to talk to 911?
Yeah, usually for a system like this, it's based on location. For the CI app, if you don't respond, the location is given to your contacts. So the last known coordinates. And it's actually a Google Maps link. And from my testing with it, we have it set for like, I think it's 50 meters now. It could be 50 feet. It's not very much that you have to move before it updates. And so you can get a pretty good idea of where you are. Like someone who knows you should be able to say, okay, they're at home. And for the Google Pixel, that's as well. It's based on GPS. So if you don't respond, it's the GPS coordinates that kind of dictate the next steps.
So in other words, I can't talk, but the phone will automatically tell the 911 operator, this guy can't talk, and he's at this location and he's fallen.
For fall detection with Apple, you have like 1 minute or something. I don't know, Rudy can answer because he's triggered his before. I've never triggered mine, but you have about a minute. And then if you don't respond, then it's based on location.
Well, I mean, if it calls 911 and if you don't talk to 911, they're actually going to wait for a minute, or are they going to hang up and say nobody's there?
I'm just saying, like you fall, and then the watch says, "Are you okay?" And then if you don't respond to the watch asking if you're okay, then the emergency process escalates from there, and it's based on your location. You don't have to talk to them at all in order for that to escalate.
And they'll come to your house and the doors are locked, so they smash a window and come inside, or what?
Yeah, there's all these, once you start thinking about all the points of failure, it's, I don't know. Yeah, there's definitely places where it falls through the cracks.
So I should leave my door unlocked if I'm home alone and old.
Just never be home alone either. Yeah. Yeah.
Nikki, we have another question for you. Is there an internal newsletter and a way to be an early tester for the device and a way to contact you?
If you email at info@cryonicsmonitoring.org, yeah, there will be testing phases for anything that I'm working on. It's really helpful to have people, especially if you're very diligent with detail about your technology devices, or if you work in tech. There's so many, especially for the Android, and especially going through the iOS or the CI Android app. There's so many different kinds of Android phones, and there's so many different versions, like Android 11, Android 14, that all have very different configurations in critical ways that matter for us. So whether or not the app can start from the background, or whether or not it's even allowed to make alarms on your phone at all. There's all these details that someone has to go through with these different devices and actually just try it out and see what behavior they're getting, so that we can adjust the app to make sure. Someone mentioned, oh, it's not working in this one scenario. Okay, that's this scenario, but maybe on the Samsung Android 14, it's still working great. And it's hard to gather all that information without having a ton of devices. So more people that want to volunteer for anything, like with custom hardware or any kind of monitoring, it's really, really helpful.
Outstanding. Neil, I was waiting for you to jump in. Neil, I defer to you, Neil. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm good, but you go. You're doing a great job, Rudy. You've got the helm here.
All right. Well, it's really clear to me that while this technology continues to improve and Nikki continues to be a hero, the it boils down to a lot of what Dennis was encouraging us to have, which is friends. I know that we're all super smart cryonicist and maybe have some personality issues because we all have those. But the point being, it's really important to develop roommates, significant others, people that care about you and that could be around you to basically do a lot of the things that need to be done to get you a good cryopreservation. I think we can probably agree there is no substitute for somebody who's a significant other who really moves heaven and earth to get you the things you need, whether it's to be run to the hospital, to call 911, to help make the decisions. And this is just a plug for marriage. I'm very open-minded, but I think it's a good idea to have people that care about you, and you can develop those. That's a trainable skill, like other skills are trainable. And Neil, this could be inappropriate. I don't know, but I encourage you to if you live by yourself, see if you can't find a roommate, see of any gender, see if you can't find someone that can be around you that understands how vital it is that the right people be contacted at the right time. And technology is great, but it's not there yet, and it's probably not going to be there until we get maybe personal robots that are just astoundingly intuitive. Find a friend. That would be a good take-home story from both of these presentations. Do your work early. There's a really good question that came up, and I'm not really sure we answered it because we can't answer it well, but maybe some of you have some individual personal stories that are relevant on this front as we close, which is if you have family members that are not supportive or maybe aggressively antithetical to your interest in cryonics, do you just kind of keep it at the down low, or do you precipitate a crisis and see if they'll sign the relatives affidavit? Does anybody have any experience on that's relevant to the group as we close? I guess not. Nobody.
From my point of view, I can tell you that it took me a while to work up the gumption to approach my two brothers and sister with the idea. My biggest concern was my brother's wife, my sister-in-law. And for a while, I communicated only with my two brothers and sister and said, hey, this is what I'm looking at. I had a chance to talk to them all. And I just got them to feel that reasonably comfortable with it. And then I introduced the idea of, okay, here are some documents that I would appreciate if you would sign. They've actually gone through that process twice so far. So I've reiterated to them, under the guise of time to update these documents because it's been a while.
Wow. So your relatives did sign the relatives affidavit.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And do we all know what that relatives affidavit is? That's, I believe both CI and Alcor have it's like a single sheet that says, and it's not huge. It doesn't commit them to, jump up and down to get you cryopreserved. It simply says that you're going to be, they will support you and support your cryonics arrangements and logistics. Is that about a reasonable statement?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Won't interfere.
Okay, so
I have
anybody
I
else
have
have
another
a
idea.
relevant story? That's a super relevant story, Brian. Thank you.
Okay, so Rudy, in my trust, the relative who gets me preserved gets $1 million over a period, endowment, but it's dependent on the quality of the preservation. So the better the quality, the more money they get.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you've designed not just a binary thing, but basically a scale if they get you an optimal cryopreservation, they're financially remunerated for that.
Yeah.
Hey,
That'd
for
be
$1 million bucks, I'll move in with you, Peter. And I'll get you a really good cryopreservation, I promise. I love that. That's excellent. We do have in the Cryonics Trust that I developed incentives, not just for the cryopreservation process, but also incentives to bring us back, so that the trustees are financially incented to want to bring us back, which is probably not a bad idea. It's a little broader than deeper we need to go probably tonight. Neil, I think we could put this meeting in the win column. But if you think, what's your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Rudy. Yes, let's go ahead and conclude. And we're going to have Evan take care of that now. And we want to thank Nikki for that. Go ahead, Evan. Thank you for attending another super event here at the Church of Perpetual Life. I want to thank you for your wonderful donations too. Many of you make regular donations. We appreciate that. Your donations help us continue to do all the work that we are doing. And if you'd like to make a donation, you'll find the donation link at the top of our website at www.perpetual.life. You can also go to churchofperpetuallife.org. It's a little bit longer. Our shortcut for you is perpetual.life, perpetual.life. Now, what about cryonics? You've heard a lot tonight about cryonics, and if you're curious about cryonics, you will find that there are many members in our Zoom call that would love to talk with you about it. I'll be very happy to talk with you about it. So if you have any curiosity about cryonics, feel free to email me or text me. My information's at the website, and you can email me easily there. If you are in Zoom right now, stay with us for the after party. In the after party, many people there can tell you lots more about cryonic suspension, about biostasis, about the difference, about many different ways that you may be able to live an unlimited lifespan. Next month, our services will be another YouTube and live stream with Zoom as well. So a YouTube live stream with Zoom on the last Thursday of the month, as it always is. That'll be July 31st. So join with us. I've been in talks with a celebrity guest, and we're still talking about having them come here. I hope that you're able to join us, and this event will be posted. It has been recorded. It will be posted in our YouTube live channel. So if you go to the website, at the top of the website, you'll find YouTube live stream. Click on that, and you can see this recording and all of the recordings from the past 11 years here at the church. I want to thank you for attending. Please share this recording with all the people that you love. This is an event that everybody needs to see, and we're looking forward to seeing you again in the future. See you in the Zoom party. Bye-bye.
All right.